Let's talk about it with our experts. What do you make of President Trump today coming out saying he feels horribly for Judge Kavanaugh, for his wife, for their daughters, not saying anything about the accuser, Professor Ford? Some people obviously have said that was the wrong message to send.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, I think he has a pattern of siding with the man when such situations are put before him. That being said, I think it's fair for him to stand up for his nominee, who has, to our knowledge, led an exemplary public life in 1,000 different ways, and that's understandable to me that he would do that. I also like the fact, and sort of mildly surprised, that he has followed Kellyanne Conway's lead and said hearing from the professor is part of the process and is important. I kind of expected him to possibly backtrack on that.
Or
but
attack
the fact
her,
that, right, but the fact that he has not, I think that is part of the process. What
do you make of it all? What was your reaction when he said he felt horribly for Judge Kavanaugh?
So I feel horribly for the professor, and it would be unfortunate, especially if the accusations were not true. But I would love to see the day when Donald Trump can put himself in the shoes of someone who has to have the courage to come forward and say that these things happened to them. And of course, we know that he probably struggles with that for at least 20 reasons that we've been told about in the press. I also thought it was interesting that he said that Kavanaugh doesn't deserve to face accusations or allegations. And I think, to me, I would say to that, what about the person that experienced this in a certain way? Anyway, Donald Trump.
So we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen on Monday, because as of now, Professor Ford has not gotten back to the Republicans in the Senate, the Judiciary Committee, and said, I'm going to testify. Is this, in your view, a kind of a game of chicken? I mean, I know the Democrats want there to be a delay. Republicans say, let's hold the hearing. Here's the date. Come up. We want you to testify. What happens if she doesn't show up? Do Republicans hold the hearing anyway?
Yeah, I mean, this is an unfortunate trajectory of this entire episode that was totally unavoidable. What I really hate is that we have to feel bad for one side or the other here, because both sides are inextricably changed by the way that this process is played out. And the fact that we didn't have an investigation that was conducted in private to surface these kind of things before you get into a political arena means that on the epitaph of Judge Kavanaugh, maybe Justice Kavanaugh, on the epitaph of Dr. Ford, this episode will in fact be the case. And I think that is one of the most regrettable things that I can personally kind of wrap my head around as we process where we go from here. As to whether she shows, yesterday her lawyer was on every morning show in America saying that she wanted to testify and her voice be heard. I can understand why a victim might be reluctant to do that. And so if she wanted to do that in private, certainly I don't think anybody would blame her. How she wants to conduct that, I've heard some suggest there should be some negotiation. I think people should be wide open to that, because how she wants to tell her story is fine as long as that story is told. And everybody seems, including the president, to be on board with that.
And Leader McConnell has said it's okay if she wants to testify privately. If the hearing does happen, Paul, I want to ask you about this. The reality is all 11 Republican members of the Senate Judiciary Committee are men. Of the 10 Democrats, 4 of them are women. I know that there is concern among some Republican circles that no matter what, those are bad optics if there is a public hearing.
Terrible optics. If you just think as a political strategist, which is what I am, the key vote in this upcoming election is suburban women, college-educated white women, which have been a Republican bastion for decades, but now they're crumbling away and moving to the Democratic Party. This is exactly the kind of folks who are going to be the most upset if, in fact, Dr. Ford is treated badly by these Republicans. John Cornyn, the #2 Republican in the Senate, is already beginning to tee it up. Well, there's gaps in her story. He's going to be, I think, the bad cop, and maybe it'll be 11 bad cops. So I think it's really risky. I think Josh is exactly right. The Republicans control this entirely. They should professionalize it, not politicize it. They should give it to the FBI. Anita Hill today has suggested maybe some independent body. We have an independent body. It's the FBI.
Paul, can I pause you on the FBI thing? Because that's where I get confused about all of this. In that the FBI's role typically is to provide a background check, which they've done on 6 different occasions.
6 times for him.
6 different occasions. And in fact, when they were referred by Senator Feinstein this case, they made a note for the file and included it and said, and with all due respect, our work is done here. There's not a federal crime to be responsive to. I don't understand how we're injecting the FBI.
Because it's their job to do the background check. Josh, there's no federal crime alleged in all the rest of Kavanaugh's background that we know of, right?
But I think
it's
they've
their
done
job.
it, is their point.
No, but they haven't. There were other people at the party There are contemporaneous notes that they should examine and see if they're actual. Well, not contemporaneous,
6 years ago.
Years ago notes from long before this current controversy. They can examine, let's see if those are real. There can be a search for corroboration. And the FBI is better to do that than a bunch of politicians.
Mary Catherine, I want to get your reaction to something that Carrie Severino, who's Chief Counsel and Policy Director for the Judicial Crisis Network, which is the main group backing Kavanaugh, something she said on CNN when talking about what this event might have been.
Her allegations cover a whole range of conduct from boorishness and to rough horseplay to actual attempted rape. I'm saying that the behavior she described could describe a whole range of things. I know her perception of it was one way. I'm just saying I think we have to get all of the facts.
Now, again, Kavanaugh denies all of it.
Right.
So he's not saying, oh, this was, as she said, rough horseplay. He's saying none of this ever happened. But what did you make of that?
What I'm just saying is that she should not say that because you should treat the allegations seriously. I will say conceded that optically, I mean, Republicans, they're damned if they do have a hearing and they're damned if they don't have a hearing, which is, I believe, not on the part of the accuser, but on the part of those who brought forth this information. It's part of the timing and part of the situation they're supposed to be in at this point. I will say that, like, as a woman who deeply understands the pain of somebody who might have been through this more than I would like to, I'm also somebody who would like to vet the facts. And it can't just be that you're a bad cop if you ask, okay, well, what are the facts here? Like, in the past, unfortunately, in this new era, we are all called upon to publicly examine years-old or decades-old accusations, which means you have to have respect for both the accuser and the accused, and it's a very tough position to be in. And as we've gone through all these news cycles, I have, like, come up with some criteria of, like, 1, do we have a named accuser? We have a named accuser on the record. That's important and credible. 2, contemporaneous reports. We do not have those in this case. It's nice to have those so you can have verifiable facts like the location or time or anything about this party that you can then corroborate. That's all very unclear. And then lastly, also not necessary, but like an MO that someone repeats this behavior. In the case of Roy Moore, in the case of Harvey Weinstein, I felt very comfortable saying all of these are met in the public sphere. In this case, we have one of these things thus far. And I hope that the process will elucidate more things that make me feel more comfortable accusing him, but I'm not sure.
Everyone stick around. We're going to talk about this more on Capitol Hill. Demands for a delay, demands for more witnesses, demands for the FBI to investigate. Will Monday's hearing actually even happen? So much. Take a listen to the Senate Minority Leader, Senator Chuck Schumer, discussing Mark Judge and whether he should testify on Monday.
It certainly makes sense for one witness to be Mr. Mark Judge. How could we want to get the truth and not have Mr. Judge come to the hearing and be asked questions?
And Senator Leahy said that to me just a few minutes ago. What's the strategy here? Why? I mean, Judge has already said, he told the Weekly Standard last week, he has no memory of this. This didn't happen. He said it again in a letter. Clearly, he's not going to provide some sort of corroborating evidence for Professor Ford. Why do Democrats want him to testify so much?
I mean, I suppose part of it is, if I'm a little bit cynical about it, asking him questions about the high school drinking and all of this so that he would have to answer truthfully to those and talk about these things that they did in high school.
So the culture.
Yeah, I think that would be the bolstering attempt. But for both Kavanaugh and Judge, if this is their story, all they can do is come and say, I did not do this thing. And Judge can say, I don't know him to act like this, and I never saw him act like this. And they can say that over and over again, and that's about all that they can do. And I do think it is dangerous to go down a path where if the standard is you have to prove you weren't at a party sometime in 1982, the location and number of people at which we don't exactly know, or date of which we don't know, that becomes a really nearly impossible standard to hit. And all you can do is go and say, if you believe honestly this never happened, say it never happened.
Am I being exceedingly cynical when I think that the reason Democrats want Mark Judge to testify is because he's a horrible character witness?
Ding, 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 ding.
And that they want him, and they want to try him as if he is up for the Supreme Court because he's written...
I'm glad that your cynicism surpasses mine
objective.
sometimes.
Oh, it's way past yours. What he has written and said is far more offensive than anything Brett Kavanaugh has ever said, and they want to make him Exhibit A.
Well, first off, he is the only eyewitness to this event, if in fact it happened, and a huge part of the Kavanaugh defense is he's such a great guy. He's a better Catholic than I am. He's a better American than you are. Just ask him. It's baloney, okay? It's baloney.
What's baloney?
Brett Kavanaugh used the power of the Office of Independent Counsel, he worked for Ken Starr, to reopen the investigation of the suicide of Vince Foster. Now, I knew Vince. I worked with him. He committed suicide. It was a tragedy. That was investigated by the Park Police, by the first special counsel, Robert Fisk, by the Senate, by the House, by the Secret Service. All said the obvious, the poor man took his own life. He reopened it, spent millions of dollars, and tormented the Foster family in the most vicious, cruel abuse of power I think I've ever seen in 30 years. And he should be held to account for that. That's part of his character, too. If he would do something that horrible, I don't know what he was like in high school, but I know what he was like when he had power in that office, and he
we had a whole
that
hearing
poor family.
where we could discuss all those things, where he was under oath.
That goes to character, doesn't it?
It does go to character, and yes, I do think that Mark Judge would be a terrible character witness. Yes, as boring as many of the, most of the testimony already was, I think this would actually be entertaining. And of course, we live in a day and age of reality TV with the current president. What I think is interesting, I did not know that about what you just shared, but we talked ad nauseum about how Brett Kavanaugh's testimony made me feel, listening to him respond to Senator Hirono or to Senator Harris or to Senator Booker. The only three people of color on the committee was also like it was troubling. So to me, I do want to hear someone else who can talk about his character, even if it was in high school. There are other things that are present day and more recent that I think speak to his character more definitively than this moment.
Well, to be fair, Harris also launched an attack that went nowhere. It was far from an attack. Speculative and silly and fact-checked within an inch of its life, and he has a right to speak up against that.
I think it's interesting. The only time we question people's credentials, the only time we call into question whether or not it's silly or it was founded on good principle is when it is a woman or a person of color sitting in the United States Senate. That is really frustrating to me.
She was fact-checked the same as I am fact-checked every day when I sit in public, and that's fine. She's perfectly capable of dealing with that.
His response to her asking questions where she had good reason to believe what she was asking. I know her personally. I know that she did not launch.
And you have more information than the fact checkers
That's not true either. But what is so interesting is she just said, "Did you do this?" And he said, "It depends on who you talk to. Who told you that?" He could have just said no. And he went through this whole rabbit.
This is the whole thing about whether or not he talked.
He met with someone from one of Trump's lawyers.
I think what he did was he went. It's a large law firm, and he went to check whether he had talked to anybody from his law firm without first saying that he had.
That's very nice in how you're framing it, but that is not.
I just want to get back to the story right now about Professor Ford and Josh. Is there what are you hoping for on Monday? What's the best thing that
there's nothing good. There's nothing good. This is a circus of the highest order. It should have been prevented. It was very preventable. This is a very regrettable situation, and I think the handling of all of this from July on is a real problem. What is the most likely outcome Monday is that we again hear a he said, she said. You again hear from Democrats that they want to delay more. Now, could that have something to do with this? Sure, but so did all the document requests up until last week. So did all the Bush document requests before that. The goal, the name of the game from a tactical standpoint for justice is to try to delay the nomination as much as you possibly can. That's been like that since the beginning of Supreme Court hearings. So this is not all part of just fact-finding. This is a tactical manipulation of the system. Now, they do need to get to the bottom of this. Monday's important for a whole range of issues.
Yeah, everyone, thank you so much.